A dramatic court session unfolded as Omoyele Sowore unexpectedly appeared in court to testify on behalf of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, which deeply moved Nnamdi Kanu to tears and shocked many in the courtroom. Omoyele Sowore dismantled key allegations presented by the Department of State Services, DSS, exposing inconsistencies in their evidence and weakening their case significantly by pointing out that the witness testimonies lacked credibility. Omoyele Sowore's testimony highlighted the injustice of holding Nnamdi Kanu as a political prisoner, arguing that his trial was not truly judicial, but a political persecution against him for his activism and beliefs. One of the most controversial pieces of evidence presented by the Department of State Services, DSS, was a statement allegedly made by a deceased man, Sowore Ahamefula, claiming Nnamdi Kanu ordered the killing of 2,000 people. This statement was presented through a newspaper article and not directly through any legal or verifiable means. Omoyele Sowore challenged the authenticity of this evidence, stressing that a dead man cannot be cross-examined or used as a credible witness, and called the prosecution's tactics fraudulent and desperate. Omoyele Sowore emotionally explained the historical and ongoing marginalization of the Igbo people, linking Nnamdi Kanu's arrest and detention to the unresolved consequences of the Nigerian Biafran civil war and the state's refusal to forgive the Igbo community. He accused the Nigerian state of using ethnicity and political manipulation to suppress justice, arguing that the country has continuously punished the victims of the civil war while rewarding those who committed atrocities during and after the conflict. Omoyele Sowore boldly declared his support for Nnamdi Kanu and the Biafran cause, even if it means being hated or politically isolated, stating he cannot support injustice in exchange for personal or political gain. He shared powerful stories illustrating the resilience and global presence of the Igbo people, such as an Igbo pharmacist operating in war-torn areas like Gwoza and Gaburugala, emphasizing that the community contributes significantly to global society despite domestic persecution. The court session ended with widespread emotional reactions from both Nnamdi Kanu's legal team and supporters, who were encouraged by the exposure of weak evidence from the Department of State Services, DSS, and inspired by Omoyele Sowore's brave and heartfelt defense. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, was reported to have become visibly emotional in court when Omoyele Sowore, a popular human rights activist and former presidential candidate, stepped forward to speak in his defense. This moment stirred strong reactions from the courtroom observers. Omoyele Sowore accused the Nigerian military of profiling and dehumanizing young Igbo people, especially in the southeastern region, under the pretense of fighting the indigenous people of Biafra. He compared the excessive militarization in the east to the lenient treatment of armed bandits in the north. Omoyele Sowore shared a disturbing incident in which journalists traveling through Anambra State were forced to lie on the ground at gunpoint by military personnel who labeled them as ipob members. He argued that hairstyles or appearances now determine one's treatment at military checkpoints in the East. The court proceedings against Mazi Nnamdi Kanu were described as illegal and flawed. It was highlighted that the alleged crimes were committed in Anambra State, not Abuja. Yet the trial continues in Abuja in violation of a court ruling which stated that such matters should be handled in the Federal High Court in Oka. The Nigerian government was criticized for using the statement of a deceased IPOB member, known as Sowore Ahamefula, as court evidence against Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. Since the man is no longer alive to verify or defend the statement, critics called this action fraudulent and unjust. According to IPOB lawyers and activists, several sections of Nigeria's Constitution and Evidence Act were violated in the trial. These include the right to confront one's accusers, prohibition of unverified confessions, and the use of inadmissible materials like newspaper clippings. The importation-related charge against Nnamdi Kanu under the Customs and Excise Management Act was said to be null and void, as it has exceeded the legal time limit of 5 years for prosecution, rendering the case dead on arrival. Nnamdi Kanu has been held in detention for nearly 4 years since his controversial arrest and forced return from Kenya. This excessive detention period far exceeds the penalty for the alleged offences and breaches Nigerian constitutional law. Omoyele Sowore also alleged that the Nigerian government uses state institutions to deliberately frustrate and destroy large Igbo-owned businesses, especially in Lagos State, as part of a larger ethnic agenda to suppress southeastern progress. The IPOB movement issued a press statement demanding the immediate end of the trial, calling it a sham and a global embarrassment to Nigeria's justice system. They claimed that the government's actions were politically motivated and warned that continued injustice could breed national chaos. On a day that began like any other in the courtroom of the Federal High Court in Abuja, something extraordinary unfolded before the eyes of everyone present. It was a moment not many had anticipated, but it would come to define a new chapter in the ongoing legal battle surrounding Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra. That day, the courtroom was already tense with expectation, as every session in Nnamdi Kanu's case often is. Supporters gathered outside the gates, chanting prayers and slogans, while inside, the weight of history, pain, and long-standing ethnic conflict sat heavily in the air. But no one, absolutely no one, expected what happened when Omoyele Sowore walked in. Omoyele Sowore, the well-known human rights advocate, journalist and former presidential candidate, was not just there to observe. He was there to speak, and not just speak, but to take a firm stand in defense of someone whose cause had stirred controversy across Nigeria for years. The moment Omoyele Sowore stood up to defend Nnamdi Kanu, it was as if time paused. Gasps echoed throughout the courtroom. Even the presiding judge seemed slightly taken aback. There was an unmistakable weight to the atmosphere, a gravity that announced something deeply significant was about to happen. For Nnamdi Kanu, it was overwhelming. The man who had held firm through interrogations, detentions, solitary confinement, and accusations of terrorism broke down in tears. But these were not tears of weakness or defeat. They were tears of recognition, tears of solidarity, and most of all, tears of joy. It was an emotional release that came from seeing someone with whom he did not always agree politically or ideologically stand up for him. Not out of convenience or obligation, but out of sheer conviction. Omoyele Sowore's voice rang out in the courtroom, calm but charged with emotion. He began by addressing the judge, the lawyers, and the observers present. He made it clear from the beginning that he was not there for any political advantage. He was not looking to score points or win public applause. He was there for justice. He stated plainly that what was happening to Nnamdi Kanu was not a legal proceeding in the true sense of the word. It was political persecution. He spoke about how the Department of State Services, which is Nigeria's secret police, had been dragging this case forward for years, with weak evidence, faulty testimonies, and outright constitutional violations. According to Omoyele Sowore, the trial had no basis in law, and the prosecution's attempts to criminalize Nnamdi Kanu were rooted in fear and ethnic politics, not justice. One of the most stunning revelations Omoyele Sowore addressed in court was a piece of so-called evidence presented by the Department of State Services. It was a newspaper article quoting a man named Owo Ahamafula, who allegedly said that Nnamdi Kanu ordered the killing of 2,000 people. But here is the catch. Owo Ahamafula is dead. He cannot testify. He cannot be questioned. He cannot explain himself or clarify what he meant. And he certainly cannot be used in any fair trial as a credible source of information. Omoyele Sowore emphasized this point passionately. He called it fraudulent and desperate for the prosecution to rely on the words of a deceased man to try to condemn someone. He asked the court with sincere conviction whether justice can truly be served by dragging in the words of the dead and using newspaper clippings as evidence in a criminal trial. His rhetorical questions echoed in the minds of everyone present, raising doubts even among some of the prosecution's own supporters. He pointed out that this tactic of using unverifiable information is not just bad law, it is bad faith. It is an insult to the intelligence of the Nigerian people, and it undermines the very principles of democracy, justice, and fairness. But Omoyele Sowore did not stop there. He took the opportunity to speak about something far deeper, the unresolved pain and injustice of the Nigerian Biafran civil war, a conflict that ended decades ago, but continues to shape the lives of millions of people, especially in the southeastern region of Nigeria. He reminded the court and the public that the wounds of that war were never truly healed. The Igbo people, who had fought for the secession of Biafra, were never truly reintegrated into the Nigerian state with dignity and equality, and instead they have faced systemic marginalization, profiling, and economic sabotage. The arrest and continued detention of Nnamdi Kanu, in Omoyele Sowore's view, was a continuation of this marginalization. He said that the Nigerian government has refused to forgive the Igbo community, punishing them again and again, not for crimes, but for seeking to be heard, for seeking fairness, and for daring to question the status quo. He compared the excessive military presence in the southeastern region to the far more lenient treatment of armed bandits in the north. According to him, while communities in the north were being terrorized by gangs and terrorists with very little resistance from the government, the southeastern region had become heavily militarized, with young men being profiled and harassed simply for wearing certain hairstyles or clothing. To make his point even more vivid, Omoyele Sowore shared a chilling experience. He spoke of journalists who were traveling through Anambra State and were stopped by Nigerian military personnel. These journalists were made to lie down on the ground at gunpoint, accused of being members of the indigenous people of Biafra simply because of how they looked. Their appearance alone was enough for them to be treated like criminals, like enemies of the state. He asked again, what kind of country are we building if a person's hair or tribal marks can determine whether they are treated with dignity or violence? As he continued, Omoyele Sowore reminded the courtroom that the trial of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu should not even be taking place in Abuja. The alleged crimes, if they happened at all, were said to have been committed in Anambra State. A previous court had already ruled that such matters should be tried in the Federal High Court sitting in Oka. Yet, for reasons no one could adequately explain, the trial remained in Abuja, violating both jurisdictional law and common sense. It became clear to everyone listening that this was not merely a defense speech, it was a declaration of conscience. Omoyele Sowore openly admitted that by standing with Nnamdi Kanu, he risked being politically isolated, attacked, or even targeted. But he said that if justice is not worth taking risks for, then what is? He told stories of Igbo people doing incredible things around the world despite the discrimination they face at home. One story stood out, a tale of an Igbo pharmacist working in war-torn areas such as Gwoza and Gaburugala. This pharmacist, even while surrounded by violence and insecurity, continued to serve humanity, distributing medicine and providing care to people who had nowhere else to turn. It was a testament, Omoyele Sowore said, to the strength, resilience and global relevance of the Igbo people. He asked why a country would seek to destroy the very people who build it, who heal it, who raise its name abroad. The courtroom sat in silence for a long time after Omoyele Sowore finished. The judges, the lawyers, the onlookers, everyone felt the impact of what had just been said. Even those who did not support the indigenous people of Biafra were moved by the honesty and courage with which he spoke. Nnamdi Kanu sat quietly at the defendant's bench, wiping tears from his eyes. These were not tears of despair, but of hope. They were the tears of a man who had seen the worst of injustice, but had also just witnessed a moment of human dignity, empathy, and truth. The defense team of Nnamdi Kanu was visibly encouraged. For years, they had been fighting against a system they believed to be unfair, and here was someone outside of their usual circle validating their claims and lifting their spirits. Supporters of the indigenous people of Biafra gathered outside the court were electrified by the news. Videos of Omoyele Sowore's testimony quickly spread across social media platforms, drawing both praise and criticism, but overwhelmingly igniting conversations around justice and equality. Within hours, statements began to emerge from various quarters. The indigenous people of Biafra released an official press statement demanding the immediate end of what they called a sham trial. They labeled the case a national disgrace and a global embarrassment, warning that continued injustice would only deepen Nigeria's political and ethnic crisis. Legal experts began weighing in. Several noted that many parts of the prosecution's case were indeed based on evidence that would not be admissible in any fair judicial process. For instance, the importation-related charge filed against Nnamdi Kanu under the Customs and Excise Management Act had already expired under Nigerian law, which gives a maximum of 5 years for such offences to be prosecuted. Nnamdi Kanu had now been held for almost 4 years since his extraordinary rendition from Kenya, a move that itself has been condemned by many international human rights organizations as a violation of both international and Nigerian law. Beyond the technicalities, what Omoyele Sowore achieved that day was far more profound. He shifted the focus of the conversation from legality to humanity. He refused to allow the courtroom to be a place where history is buried, where truth is silenced, or where ethnic injustice is normalized. And in doing so, he reminded everyone that even in the midst of chaos, courage can still rise, voices can still speak, and hope can still be revived. As the session ended and people began to file out of the courtroom, the air still carried the weight of what had happened. It was not just about Nnamdi Kanu anymore. It was about every Nigerian who has ever felt unheard, unseen, or unwanted. It was about every marginalized group who has ever wondered if justice was something meant only for the powerful. It was about truth and the cost of telling it. Omoyele Sowore's appearance in court did not mark the end of Nnamdi Kanu's trial, but it certainly marked a turning point. It was a moment that history will remember, not just for its drama, but for its sincerity. And as Nnamdi Kanu walked out of the courtroom that day, still in detention but newly encouraged, he carried with him not just the weight of his own struggle, but the strength of knowing he was not alone. As the courtroom emptied slowly that day, and as the sun outside Abuja's Federal High Court began to lower itself behind the buildings, the echoes of what had just happened did not fade with the closing of the doors. Rather, they lingered. They remained in the hearts of the people present, etched permanently in the minds of witnesses who had seen one of the most powerful courtroom moments in Nigeria's recent legal history. But even as the physical courtroom emptied, the real courtroom, public opinion, national dialogue, and global human rights debate was only just beginning to fill up. Nnamdi Kanu's tears, shed openly and without shame, were not the kind of tears that one quickly forget, because they represented something deeper, a floodgate of emotions that had long been held back under the surface of years of incarceration, trials, betrayals, trauma, and public humiliation.
An agent of the Department of State Service, DSS, while testifying for the prosecution, tendered a newspaper publication which contained a statement said to have been made by an ipob member, Emeyiri Uzuma Benjamin, aka Onye Ami. Onye Ami allegedly said the group was able to get 30 heads for the burial of a commander of the Eastern Security Network, ESN. You can see what is going on. That was to tell you that DSS actually won the June 13 ruling and the trial of Nnamdi Kanu in court. They won on Nnamdi Kanu hands down, and that is what the IPOB people are addressing. Now, let's continue. Let's roll on. You will see where we're heading to. You see the moment Sowore stormed the court. Nwonkike Ayinayo and the popular known as Nkonso, who was killed by security forces in April 2021 in Awomama, Oru East local government area of Imo State. The prosecution witness alleged that Kanu in a broadcast said 2,000 heads would be used to bury the ESN commander. However, in the statement titled, the Nigerian government has finally reduced itself to rendering dead men statements in its failed case against Nnamdi Kanu. IPOB said Onye Ami is late, adding that he did not make any statement in court. Now, since Onye Ami is late, why would the DSS bring the statement of Onye Ami? IPOB alleged that they said Onye Ami was killed in DSS custody. Faulting the use of the statement as evidence, IPOB stressed that Onye Ami cannot be available for cross-examination to authenticate the claims. The statement said, the so-called trial of our leader Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, which has long degenerated into psychos, reached its lowest point yet in Abuja a few days ago. In a desperate attempt to sustain their collapse case, the Nigerian government through Awomolo SAN shamelessly presented as evidence a newspaper publication which purportedly quoted a man named Onye Ami. According to Vanguard newspaper, Onye Ami allegedly confessed that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu ordered him to kill 2,000 people, but he managed to kill only 30. Let it be made clear to the Nigerian public and the international community, Onye Ami never appeared in court. He never testified. This so-called statement was never given in court or even directly to the DSS investigators handling the case. Instead, it was PWDDD, a DSS operative, who merely read out what Vanguard newspaper claimed that Onye Ami said. Incredibly, PWDDD admitted under oath that he never interviewed Onye Ami and had no first-hand knowledge of any such confession.
One guy who says, we want justice, we don't want to stay in Nigeria, we are holding him perpetually using the judiciary or judicial, subterfuge to keep the trial. And everybody who knows what they are doing understand that it's not a judicial matter.
So Nnamdi is essentially a political prisoner.
He's a political hostage. Well, I'll call him not a political because he may not, whomever is in power, except me, will keep him in jail.
So do you think that it was generally an endangered species in Nigeria? Going back what you just narrated?
The truth, that's the truth. Nigeria did not forgive Igbo since the end of the Civil War.
What did they do?
Because they challenged the real estate of the British called Nigeria. So, and they didn't forgive them since then. So everything that's been done after that, we know this is the unspoken truth about the country called Nigeria, that they did not forgive Igbos for the Civil War.
The Igbos were the victims and they have forgiven the victims. So why is it difficult for the victors to...
You are preaching to the choir.
And because he had mentioned once that, in an interview, he had mentioned that the Igbos will never be president of Nigeria. There is a perpetual, narration to keep the Igbos where they are.
Yes, so, it's not about even the presidency. If they find an Igbo man that is malleable, that can work in their interest, they can make him president if he doesn't have any power. You can be a president of Nigeria and not have the powers of the president. When they wanted to destroy the landmark, who was the minister in charge? It's not an Igbo man.
And Moka is Igbo speaking, also fighting.
It's easier for them to use an Igbo man to carry out. If it was done by a Yoruba man, the uproar would have been worse. But you find an Igbo minister of works to help you demolish Igbo businessmen. You say, can't you see them? So it's easier that way. It's manipulation. It's how Nigeria manipulate people. But I'm not saying that if he was a Yoruba minister, he cannot demolish. They will do it too. It's easy. Anybody could have done it as long as there's an agreement to do it. Because beyond just ethnicity, there's also an elite conspiracy against Nigerian people. So an average poor person is endangered, but you are likely more endangered if you have committed a generational crime against the Nigerian real estate.
By being an Igbo man.
Of course, that's the truth. That's why you were saying, oh, you are Yoruba man. If based on what I say, they even tell me I'm not Yoruba enough. But I'm of mixed heritage. There's a part of me that is Ijo.
Okay.
But we are the Ijo speaking Yorubas. We are the Yoruba speaking Ijos in Ondo State.
Okay.
So they call us Ijo Apoy.
Ilaje area.
No, it's Ilaje. So we're next to Ilaje.
Okay.
But my great-grandparents came from Yoruba side of things. But the stream that Sowore is named after is in the Ijebu water side, because that's how they came. So, but I don't speak to people based on ethnicity. I don't define myself based on my ethnic heritage, even though I do not deny it. But because it underlies our humanity to be assigned an ethnic position before you can be respected. Are you getting my point? Or before your views can carry on, so you have to be a Yoruba man, and then it was
So we've had
here comes
Rwanda.
one of them.
We've had Rwanda manage the same ethnic issue in their country with the Hutsi Tutsi thing after years of genocide.
Are you sure they managed it?
Well, to a reasonable
extent. They have to manage it through genocide. And Nigeria
after genocide management.
So this is what you should understand.
Okay.
Nigeria also managed the Igbo problem through genocide. 4 million Igbos.
Yeah, I was coming to that.
Is that not genocide? But you know the problem I have sometimes even with some of our people is that the same people who shot and killed them are more popular in their midst than those who support their rights. The Obasanjos of this world are embraced as authentic people, but these are the people who went and used top commando to massacre Igbos. What did they name this airport after? Murtala Mohammed, one of the most notorious killers of Igbos. Buhari, they kill Igbos. Danjuma, they kill Igbos. Gowon, they kill Igbos. But they even love them more than they love those of us who are fighting. People challenge me that, they hate me because I support Nnamdi Kanu. And I said, so be it. Because I know that I'm supporting justice. And I cannot support injustice because I want political favors from a country. If you want to keep carrying out genocide of political nature or continuation of it, you can go ahead. Keep voting for the criminals who are perpetrating it. Let the forest be voting for the axe because the handle is from one of them.
Okay. I said something. I'd like you to touch more on it. I mean, the Igbos were the victims. Now they are forgiving the victors. There is no place you don't find the footprints of Igbos across the length and breadth.
That's why I say you are preaching to the choir. Igbos are not only in Nigeria; they are all over the world. I went to Alabama in the US. And the only pharmacist there is an Igbo man. Selma, Alabama. You've heard about Selma?
Yeah.
It's one of the homes of the civil rights movement, where they cross that Petra Bridge.
Exactly.
Igbo man is there. Most likely that's what you find in every community in the US. Igbos are distributed all over the world. There's this urban legend that if Igbos cannot live in a place, the place is not livable. There was a time, a New York Times reporter came to Gamboru Ngala after Boko Haram sacked the place. The only person they found there who was not a Boko Haram member was an Igbo pharmacist. So what are you doing here? He said, well, somebody has to treat them. You know, he was that courageous enough to stay there. So I'm saying all these things so that you can understand that I understand probably more consciously better than most people do. And that informs the reason I can speak categorically about the victimization of Igbo. Otherwise, it is a taboo. Politically, it is incorrect to say that Igbos are victimized by an average Nigerian.
Okay. All right. So let's move
because nobody wants to hear the truth, you know. And when you say, if somebody is watching you again, and say, Sowore, what's your problem now? Leave these Igbo people alone. You understand? That is the truth. But I cannot. My conscience cannot allow me to accommodate the genocide of 3 million people, 4 million people, and then the continuation of that denunciation of the existence through persecution in which the Nigerian state is carrying out, either through Landmark or Nnamdi Kanu or, you know, look, I told a story, I think it was on a honest punch, that in this country, there was a time they were beheading Igbos, putting their heads in calabash and putting on the trains going. Yes.
Do you think that's what's happening in the East right now? Speaking about militarization of the East.
Pogrom, you understand? And that's why they're doing it. It's what they're doing. When we did August, what did we ask for? Demilitarization of the East and release of Nnamdi Kanu was one of our demands. But it was the most denounced demands, even by human rights people. They told us, no, don't include Kanu in your demands. Otherwise, we will not join you. Because Nigeria has been made to believe that a crime committed against Igbo doesn't fall under human rights abuse.
So let's speak about that crime against Igbo, because a popular, I think I read in your paper recently.
And unfortunately the Ohanese people said they should not join the protests, that they are negotiating with Tinubu. They even said that he will release him for Christmas gift, as if he's a Christmas goat.
All right, so speaking about this militarization of the Southeast, recently I read in your platform, a popular media mogul, one of the media platform in Lagos State, was dehumanized in the Southeast. He was traveling through Anambra State to Asaba Airport, and he was accosted, he and about 3 DSS officials were accosted by military personnel who, you know, dehumanized them, told them to lie on the floor, in fact, told them they were going to shoot at them, told them that they were IPOB. Do you think there has been accusations that most of the people killed in the Southeast in the guise of IPOB are really not IPOB?
Exactly.
They were killed by military. Do you think that this is exactly what's happening?
These guys are burning down villages, Nigerian army. They are burning down villages. Like, if you are 17 years old in the East, you carry any kind of hairstyle and you run into a military checkpoint, you are automatically targeted. It's profiling.
Oh, wow.
You understand? But go to Katsina. Listen to this before we end this broadcast. The governor in Katsina said a whole local government with tons of bandits have only 5 policemen in their area. They have only 1 vehicle, no military. But there are bandits all over the place. Why is it that banditry and terrorism in the north is treated with kid gloves, and people who are asking for what is recognized by the United Nations as self-governance, the request for self-governance is treated as a crime against the state? But terrorism is not treated the same way in the East. I traveled in the northern part of Nigeria during the election in 2019 and also in 2023. You can drive all the way from some of the most, you know, bandits havens,
Dangerous points, and there will be no policeman or army on the way.
Okay. But you cannot travel in the east today. Is 1 kilometer, 1 military battalion.
Unfortunately, that is what it is. Before we, can I ask you a personal question?
Go ahead.
You have we have spoken a lot here, and you are more like a repetition of speaking truth to power. Sowore, do you fear for your life?
It's too late. You know, my life had been taken several times to the point that all I'm dedicated to is living my life one day at a time. And the reason is this. When I was leaving the university, I did not know, I left the university at the age of 24, 25. I did not know that I would make it up to 30. So I used to say at that time that I was living on borrowed times. I'm 54 now. If I die today and an autopsy is performed on me, they will find the heart of a 90-year-old man inside my body, because it's been a lot. My heart has carried a lot of pain and anguish. But I've carried on, and as a result, I cannot be afraid of my shadows when people who didn't even do half of what I've done have died of preventable diseases, some malaria. So people like me are lucky. And if you look at the life expectancy of a Nigerian man, I think it's now
50-something, 56,
54.
56.
So I've lived a few months above that. I'm going to be 55 in February. I've tried.
You're not going anywhere yet. But before you go, before you start going where you want to go to, let's look at 2027. There's been lots of, chess playing here and there against 2027. And then coalition of, some people are already saying that there is no way anybody can beat Bola Tinubu in any election, irrespective of his performance.
No,
if they don't come together. What do you think is the way forward?
You can beat Tinubu in an election, but you cannot beat him in a selection. And that's what they are planning. They are not going to have another election.
Are you serious?
Yes, they're not.
How do you mean?
Well, let's start from here. Who conducts the election? INEC. Go and find out how many federal electoral commissioners were appointed by Tinubu who are APC card-carrying members to replace the ones that are retired. Almost, infinite. Did you know that Bola Tinubu appointed 11 Supreme Court justices since he came to power? These two bodies.
So there is no hope in Nigeria will continue like this?
Well, if you don't want to continue like this, make it very clear that we can't continue like this. And that has to happen now.
You can see everything that Sowore said in this very video that I just finished watching. Now let's continue with everything that happened in court after what Sowore said. You hear things for yourself. Just stay connected as we roll on and see things for yourself the way it goes.
Now, let's kick on. The most gross-school part of this charade is that Onyekame is dead, killed while in DSS custody. He is not available for cross-examination, verification or confirmation of any statement attributed to him. This is not law. This is not justice. This is outright fraud upon the court.
Now, you can see what is going on. You can see that the ipob members that the DSS have been accusing in court, they now pointed finger at the DSS again. They said because the DSS wanted to bring out statement from Onyekame, that's why they intentionally poof Onyekame in their custody. The ipob people are alleging the DSS now, is allegedly, they're not alleging the DSS that they were the one that poof Onyekame in their custody just because they want to use some statement against Nnamdi Kanu just to bring Nnamdi Kanu down totally. Now let's ride on. Let's see what's going on in court. Drama is happening now. You can share the video, just share it as you're watching it. And if you can share it, just like it. Drop your heart for Nnamdi Kanu in the comment section of the video as we ride on.
Further faulting the evidence, the statement added, the Nigerian government has not fully descended into graveyard evidence. fabricating confession of people they have killed, and tendering them through newspaper clippings. This scandalous conduct violates every known principle of Nigerian law, including Section 29 of the Evidence Act states that prohibiting involuntary unverified confession. Section 83, line 1 of the Evidence Act states that rendering third parties hearsay newspaper reports inadmissible. Section 36, line 6 of the Constitution states that guaranteeing the accused the right to confront his accusers. Section 36, line 8 of the Constitution states that prohibiting further prosecutions where punishment has already been served or exceeded. The statements further insisted that Kanu's trial is illegal, giving a number of reasons to justify the argument. Beyond the brazen evidentiary fraud, the trial itself remained fundamentally illegal for several reasons. Non-jurisdiction in Abuja, the Court of Appeal CA/ABJ/CR/625/2022 has already ruled that the alleged confess, if any, occurred in Ubunisi Uzo, Anambra State, and can only be tried by Federal High Court in Awka, not Abuja. The continued proceedings in Abuja are in open contempt of that binding judgment. Violation of custom law, CEMA. Under Section 178 of CEMA law, jurisdiction lies only where the offense occurred or where the accused reside. Abuja meets neither of the condition. This Abuja trial is forum shopping and gross abuse of court process. Statute beard offense. Now, the alleged offense of importation or transmitter under CEMA carries a maximum limitation period of 5 years. More than 5 years have elapsed, rendering this prosecution legally dead on arrival.
Now, the fighting for the cause of Nnamdi Kanu as the stating out what the Nigerian Constitution and what the Nigerian law is stating, and this alone is actually kicking the DSS down. All the allegations against Nnamdi Kanu is going down the drain at the moment. Now, let's try down.
Excessive detention. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu has been legally detained for nearly 4 years since his unlawful rendition or unlawful extradition from Kenya. This far exceeds the maximum penalty for the alleged custom offense, violating the constitutional right under Section 36, line 8, and binding case law in Uzoku Ezono 2, 1991. The recent so-called inspection of a radio transmitter by Justice Omotosho inside DSS headquarters has no legal foundation. The Court of Appeal had already ruled that such matters belong in Awka, not Abuja. This exercise was nothing but media choreography to please blood-testing political hawks. IPOB added, the entire proceeding is nothing but a well-rehearsed media cycle designed to produce headlines, not justice. The Nigerian justice is being dragged into disrepute before the entire world. Every illegal act by this government in this matter only deepen Nigerian global disgrace. We remind the Nigerian government that injustice breeds chaos. No amount of manufactured evidence, fraudulent confession, or forum shopping will destroy the truth. The whole world is watching. The whole world is watching this charade. The only honorable path left is for this sham trial to be terminated. The only honorable path left is for this sham trial to be terminated immediately.
This is the end of our news update. Please click the icon on the top right corner of your screen to watch my next video. You will enjoy it. I will see you again in my next update. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.